Bill, can you hear the meeting room?
I could barely hear it. No, I cannot hear anything in the meeting room.
Yeah, no, I can't either. I'll let them know.
Yeah. But Tara is, who is also coming in remotely, is having the same problem.
Test, test, 1, 2, 1, 2.
You want to do this the hard way?
I can hear the meeting now.
You can hear it
Okay.
now? Perfect. Thank you, Bill.
Awesome. All right, great.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Sharon.
So, Bill, we were just finishing up the roll call if you wanna do your work. Okay.
Bill?
Bill,
YouTube is working as well.
I don't, wait, if you're losing that again? If you take it there,
Bill, can you
Yeah.
hear us?
so is it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, can you hear me?
Can you hear Wendy?
No,
You can't hear me?
well, barely.
Is it just me or is it?
Bill, can you turn your volume up at all?
Yeah, I did. It's on as high as it's gonna go.
Kara, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little bit more quiet than usual, though.
That's my.
That's on right there. And it's on.
Bill, can you hear this?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, that mic is always good.
Okay, hold on. Let me just, I'm just gonna power that back on.
You can hear this, Bill, right, Tara?
Yes.
Okay. They can hear this.
They can hear, can you hear this?
Hello, hello. Okay, how is the volume now?
Heather,
Okay.
We've listened to that.
Rob, why don't you say something?
Hello, hello.
Sorry, get out of your way.
I don't know why that, it's just,
Is it picking that up instead of speakers?
Oh, we can hear that really well.
yeah,
It should be the Zeddy. That's why I'm not.
Okay.
Go back to here for a second.
Well, I guess we'll just try to muddle forward and everyone will just speak loudly.
I'm just gonna. Bill, you're all set now, right?
Yeah, I can hear. I just heard, so go ahead,
Okay,
wait for me.
okay. So, awesome. Thanks, everyone. So Lisa is present as well. We have a full house. That's awesome. We're here to review and really have more time to talk through Craig's request from August 11 to look at the zoning or the usages permitted on his lots. We're talking 104.40 and 104.41, which had been merged.
Madam Chair, could I recuse myself from this discussion?
Sure thing. Yes, thank you, Rich. So those, just for a recap, those lots are in LDR. And after their merger, that became a single 2.8 acre lot. So what Mr. Larson is proposing is to do, and I'll have you chime in, Craig, if I'm not being succinct. 5 cottages, 4 cottages on his lot where there is currently a single family home. Is it a 4-bedroom you have right now, 3-bedroom?
It's 5, actually.
5-bedroom, single family home is there now. So what we've been looking at, we talked about during our last regular scheduled meeting, was the possibility of changing what's permitted. Well, there are a few different ways to move forward. Change what's permitted in LDR. Change what's permitted in rec if this lot were to be changed from LDR to rec. And Tara had proposed a couple of other things which had come up in the course of our discussion as well. So I think the first point, of course, Craig, as an individual in town, can move forward any proposal on his own. So we need to decide as a board if we want to support creating some type of a change that would allow him to do this type of lodging. The 4 cottages would be for transient lodging, which of course at this point is not allowed in LDR or rec. So I think our first decision is whether or not the planning board wants to get behind this. And if so, what the best course forward would be.
So, Madam, let me just understand. What option 1 and 2, which would be allowing in LDR and or rec, is a zoning change, which would mean we would put a warrant forth at the March town meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And it would be subject to town vote.
Right.
Yes. So whichever.
Just to, yeah.
Yes, yes. Absolutely. Is there anything that I missed there, Craig, that you wanted to add?
No, I think you got all the facts correct. The reason I'm asking for support is I'm a firm believer in community input on it. Yes, I have the right to put some warrant on the town record in March myself, but my language might not be amenable to everybody. And be honest with you, let's like site plan review. I've learned very much so that occasionally you can have a better project if you bring more people in on it. And that's really why I'm here. I just want to do 4 small limited cottages to use seasonally to allow an owner occupied with conditions. It would still be, I would hope that the warrant would say something along the line is it would still have to come back to the board for permission.
Yeah.
So this is not just because your town meeting would allow it, doesn't mean it would happen the next day. You would still have to come back. And then there would be conditions put on the permits. which is what I would assume everybody would want.
Right.
Whereas if they got voted in, just generically, there might not be, or no conditions, who knows?
Well, any type of development like that would need to come before the planning board, unless if we
Right.
were to put it forward as a allowable by special
By right.
exception. No,
Yeah.
but no, by right, it would still have to come before the planning board.
Yeah,
If we did special exception, it would have to go before the
right, and I would
ZBA,
prefer the special exception,
for the ZBA.
or no, for here. the
For by
planning
right.
board. Planning
Yeah.
board would control it. And that way you would have conditions, and then if in case I got hit by a truck, the next guy or girl could have to come back here too. Things like that, so it's because it will go forward.
Right.
The reason I'm doing it or proposing it is that I just think that if you have such a large lot, which it is a large lot, it's probably one of the largest lots in the zoning district, that, you know, we can do other things besides one single family house.
Okay.
And that's really what it is. So I'll take questions or whatever, but yes, you have to. I'm asking you for your support. If, and it would help to write it up the correct way.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let's start off at first with if the board feels like we want to move forward with this. We mostly met today because of the.
Can I ask a
last-
question?
Yeah.
Craig, when you use the word seasonally, which seasons are we talking about?
Summer,
So we're talking about something for,
10 weeks.
okay,
So they would not be insulated, right? It'd just be,
Regardless of how it's constructed, that's more like a building, and, you know, I'm used to more of a Massachusetts building codes that they're approved, and we would have to insulate them in Massachusetts regardless of how we use them. I think the building codes up here are a little bit less tense, but on the special exceptions, you could actually put in the times of when it was open or closed or whatever, and regardless of how they were built, I
Okay.
guess. And that's where I think you want to, that's my point, is that I think you want to control this.
right, except the other thing is, especially when we look at, if something were to be
If I get away
created.
without insulating, I will.
Yeah, if something, just if something were created, there is an allowance for natural growth of a business. So once they're there for future owners, it could be easier for
I think
it
if
to
you put
become not
a
seasonal.
control in for seasonal 10 weeks, it is 10 weeks.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you can't rock and roll in those 10 weeks. It just means that,
Okay.
and somebody would have to come back to the board and say, I want 11th week or something like that. And then it would be your decision how to handle it.
Okay.
And you can also put in time frames into it too.
Okay.
But if I can get away without insulating, trust me, I will. I want to
Okay.
build them as, not as cheap as possible, but inexpensively as possible.
Of course. Okay, thank you.
Craig, I had a question. It's appropriate. But as far as the land that this is going on, is where you cleared that area just below your house?
I still own more.
Is that where you're thinking about putting them now?
I prefer to do them down below, yes,
Okay, and you, do you?
but I still have land on both sides.
Right. And are you gonna run a sewer line to the street or septic?
I have a sewer stub on the property, on the other property now that I could run to. There is a sewer on T Lane. There's a stub on T Lane.
Yeah,
Without talking to DPW or to Mark or the town, I have done in the past is where I brought a whole sewer line right up. I could bring it right up Snows Mountain Road and actually pay for that, and either materials or labor. The times that I've done stuff like that, I've usually paid the materials and the town paid for the labor, but I've brought sewer lines down roads before. I don't have, because of Snows Mountain Road, it's kind of an undefined road as far as my rights in that road, but I think I have rights in the road to bring utilities up that road. So I would prefer, I'm a big fan of septic. I prefer that all of Snows Mountain Road be septic and part of the pay for the septic treatment plant. I think everybody should be paying for that thing. So we need to tie in. I prefer to tie in.
okay,
Okay,
that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
But backing up a little bit as to whether this seems like something the board would want to support. It seems like with the questions going forward, that's where the board is leaning.
Snows Mountain Road is a public road,
Yes.
right? Public way.
Town
Town
maintained.
maintained, town road.
Yeah.
But we have rights on that road.
But again, just to refocus, if we want to support moving this forward with language for town meeting along one of these pathways. Is that where the
Yeah, I
board
think
is
so.
leaning? Yes.
Mhm.
Let the town decide.
Yes.
Yep, okay. All right, so then it's a matter of whether or not, which path we would recommend following. I had mentioned at the last meeting that I'm very concerned with changing what's allowed in recreational district. I feel like once we start to allow lodging there, we'll see that all that open space diminish greatly. I still feel that way. But perhaps the town is changing and that's the way it's going to be.
No, that is, I support your concern. And that one of my largest concerns about this project is unintended consequences. And that the unintended consequence could be that, you know, Craig runs a good operation, but he inevitably will sell it. And whoever takes over that property afterwards could be more interested in lodging on recreation than in running a golf course. And the assumption is that this is the best property in Waterville Valley. It has the best views. And it's assumed that it will always be recreational. Well, that's, I think, okay, that's my opinion, that it's always going to be recreational. But if we change the zoning regulations, these are big moves.
Yes.
This is, you know, a massive undertaking to change the regulation to allow lodging and recreational.
Yep.
So somebody who takes over the golf course is more interested in lodging than he is in running a golf course, could change the nature of that property.
Absolutely. And the tennis courts as well.
Yes,
Yep.
somebody who owns the tennis courts could think, you know, I'm a much higher and better use to my property
Yeah.
by putting lodging on it than by running tennis courts.
In the 12 acres down by the river.
Right.
Yeah, he could have another idea as to what he wants to do with that property.
Right.
As, you know, if we convey you know, these exceptional, we change rules to accommodate Craig's plan. And somebody who owns other recreational property in the town could very well think that they should be granted privileges as well.
Mhm.
And come to us with a plan and say, do you support this idea, that idea?
Okay.
You know, this fits into the unintended consequences.
Right. Anyone else have any comments as far as the rec pathway?
Can I comment a little bit on that?
Okay,
Is that right?
yeah.
I prefer to stay in the low density residential zoning district personally. I just I saw what happened last year, when they tried to do some, you know, some Airbnb and all that, and it just seemed like it was people that lived in the low residential district there that really did not want any transient or any other kind of development.
Right.
That's why I was thinking about dividing it up a little bit. I prefer to keep it in the LDR.
Right.
Personally.
Okay.
And you could put conditions on that. I was planning on the units to be like a half acre size. So you could say that we would do it a special exception on lots that would handle half acre per unit, let's say.
Okay.
And that would limit the amount, this project would be probably one of the only lots that could be done on. I did look at all the lot sizes, and I don't, if you did a half acre, you wouldn't get anybody else that could physically do it.
Right.
Unless they start buying up all the houses,
Okay.
and I don't see that happening.
Right.
But as far as what you're saying, as far as the rec side, yeah, I only was seeing how it would be the best political route to go, not necessarily the best route.
No,
Okay.
I fully understand.
All right,
But, you know, from the board's point of view,
right.
you know, we have to think about,
The other thing is there would be an accessory use to a principal business if you did the rec thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that means there always has to be a principal use
But that principal use could be redefined easily through the years into mini golf. You know, it could be, you know, we don't know,
Right.
but that's what we have to keep in mind.
Yes,
Okay,
all right.
Yeah.
so, anyone else on the board feel differently about our thoughts on rec here? So are we looking at the LDR pathway?
Yep.
Oh, Rich,
Is it open?
please. Oh, sorry, of course, please. Uh-oh.
Rich Reed at 38 Snows Mountain Road. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're considering right now when you say the LDR pathway.
Creating an instance where there would be an allowance for this type of limited lodging in specific LDR lots, on specific LDR lots. Sorry.
No, on
It
LDR.
wouldn't be applicable to the entire zoning district?
No, it would.
It would.
Yes,
It would.
it would. But, you know, if we were to define lot size, I don't know how granular we can get, maybe with adjoining other zoning districts or the lot size, it seems like is the main route that could be taken. It would have to be, it couldn't necessarily be defined as a bed and breakfast because we have a different definition for that. I don't know, I'm kind of open for, what are your thoughts, Mark?
Currently in LDR, we have a minimum lodging size, minimum
Lot
housing
size.
We have a minimum lot size, half acre.
Yeah,
And don't we also have a minimum size of the lodging being built in that area?
We don't allow lodging in
For
LDR.
housing.
For a house,
Housing,
For
housing.
housing, not.
Right.
not lodging.
but for a house, and that minimum is
A half acre.
how much?
No, the size of the house.
The
Size of the
size-
house.
Oh,
Is it-
sorry,
There's no,
isn't it,
there's- I don't, you cap what the coverage of the lot
Yeah, you don't have.
should
size
be, but you do not mandate a certain size house that I'm aware of.
No, there's no deed restrictions on that property.
Okay,
No,
No,
no.
that's another problem altogether, which, you know.
okay.
we don't have to
Mini
1,500?
houses.
That would be a covenant under a subdivision, and there is no covenant under the subdivision.
Some
No.
towns require a certain size building, but our zoning does not. I don't think.
Are you sure?
I thought it did.
No,
It did.
no.
Terry, you read it?
The minimum habitable floor area at grade level of the principal building shall be 900 square feet.
That's what I
The
thought.
minimum floor area of a
That's what I-
single family dwelling should be 1,500 square feet.
That's what I thought.
So right now, Craig could build something that's 900, a minimum of 900 square feet on
That's-
his property.
That'd be the
Right,
smallest.
that's my
Each quarter
understanding as well.
Each quarter acre.
Quarter acre or half acre?
Half acre.
Half acre.
Half acre.
Yes.
That was my understanding, all right, was that very simplistically, he could subdivide his property into half acre lots.
Right.
And on each half acre lot, he could build a 900 or 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever,
900.
not minimum 900 square foot residence.
Right.
And that's my understanding of what it is today.
So,
Yes,
to-
I just think it's important we understand.
no, absolutely, and that was
We
why,
understand,
That's what I was
That.
saying before, is
That's-
that I could probably do, if I can get what I want, per se, I would have to conform to zoning, which is presently 900 square feet on half acre lots, so I could probably get at least, there is a rough subdivision out there now with a 4 lot deal. And at 900 square feet, the other thing is that there would be no restrictions on how I would use those dwellings.
well, there would be in terms of how it's defined, but with Airbnb, there'd be workarounds, yeah.
Right, and I'm suggesting that I don't want to do that route.
Right.
I don't want to go that
Okay.
route. I prefer to do a less intense route. And with conditions.
Right.
so
Mark?
let me,
Let me just
go
get
ahead.
to Mark's been trying to make a point,
What if he were to do a PUD?
right?
Which
That's
would
right.
limit, I mean, which would allow the planning board to reduce setbacks so that the organization of the lot. I mean, he has enough land there
Right.
to build the number of buildings that he's requesting. What if he were to do a PUD, which allowed him to group those buildings, so he didn't have to have the setback on each lot?
Right.
You know what I mean? So the internal setbacks could be altered.
There's just still the question of whether commercial lodging, transient lodging is allowed in LDR. Because
Yes.
that would not be an Airbnb
Well,
situation.
we're taking care of that. He would just go under the short-term rental regulations that the selectmen are drawing up, just like any other person, and all of that work that you did last year. So he would just have a permit, an STR permit for the buildings in the PUD.
Right.
Hmm.
Effectively making it a PUD subdivision that he would do that way.
Right.
And it kind of
I don't
sort
know
of,
if Tara, if that's.
kind of
legal.
sort of illegal. That's where
Would
I
you
was.
mind typing in a comment to Tara to ask her?
Tara, you here? Oh,
We have to
sorry.
comment. Because she's not billing us for paying attention.
That's exactly what I wanted to go.
That's no B and B then.
It's worse, but yes, I would have a lot, the value would go down.
Right.
And I could do what I want, and the next guy could do what he wants.
Well,
Well, within
Well-
but
what's
a
allowed in
B and B,
LDR.
under our definition of B and B, what he wants to do is.
It's not a B and B.
So it's not a B and B.
It would have to be short-term
So-
rentals.
It,
It would be short-term rental.
Hey, Tara.
Yeah, I was
So-
listening a little bit, but as you said, I'm working on something I can build to at the same time.
Appreciate that. So if we were to go the route of a PUD in this LDR lot, where it's well over the 2.5 acres, there would end up being 5 buildings. So we would satisfy the ½ acre per building. The additional cottages would be at least 900 square feet to accommodate that.
Mhm.
And working within the short-term rentals allowances that are being created, is that a route we can go?
I think the PUD path has merit because that is reviewed by the planning board, whereas the special exception that Craig keeps talking about is a zoning board power, not special exceptions don't go to the planning board. And I think that might be an interesting way to get it to the planning board. The size limit is 1,500 square feet. It's the footprint is 900, but the home itself has to be 1,500.
That's confusing.
To do that, you're gonna want to look at your definitions for lodging and short-term rental because I think the fact that it's under one ownership and run as one entity right now under your definitions would make it lodging, which still wouldn't be allowed in the LDR. So I think some tweaking of what's allowed in the LDR or how you define lodging would still be needed. I think there's still a zoning change needed. I don't think it's a path that gets around needing a zoning change.
So the zoning change would be that we would need to allow transient lodging in LDR under certain defined circumstances.
Yeah, and I think, I don't see why you couldn't say when it's a planned unit development with ½ acre per unit.
Okay.
And that would get rid of the size restriction.
and that's a pretty simple change.
I would think so.
Amendment to the zoning. ordinance.
So that would,
Explain.
Huh?
so that would
Hard to
allow,
explain to the public.
well, that would allow someone with a 1 acre lot to have their house and then also build,
A guest cottage.
I guess.
yes, a 1,500 square foot Okay, maybe we would look at the minimum square footage.
I
as
think
well.
that the answer might be lowering the minimum square footage of the unit down to the base size of 900.
Just get rid of the minimum floor area,
Yeah,
1,500 square.
and so then we just basically come down to a 900 square foot. I forgot that there's both, but the 900 square foot unit might get Craig where he would like
I
to
would
be.
like it lower, but that's, I would like to eliminate it entirely. Oh, 900 square feet is like 2 hotel rooms. That's a Holiday Inn is 400, I own Holiday Inn, so
yeah,
400 square feet, so it's roughly that. The other thing is make sure you put in owner occupied. These should be done that way.
The principal building is owner
Yeah.
occupied.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Owner or manager?
No, just owner.
Owner.
Hell with the manager.
I would
No,
rather.
no
have
getting
owner.
sick and letting someone else run it.
No,
Yeah, that might make it inconsistent with other things you have, because I think we have like the bed and breakfast, the owner manager, and
Yeah, but we don't want to do this as a bed and breakfast.
yeah, I understand that, but there's a reason that you decided a manager was okay in a bed and breakfast. Why would it be different if the rooms
Yeah.
were cottages instead of the building?
I just think it's an imperative that you do owner occupied on, even on the other zoning district.
Yeah, I'm not, am I
No.
all set? I'm not,
Thank
I'm
you.
not here to debate Craig.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Tara, I appreciate it. Terry, you were gonna say something earlier.
Well, I'm a little late to the table here, so I'm trying to catch up a little bit. From this perspective, I know you guys have been wrapped up in this for a couple meetings now. But I'm kind of standing back and I'm saying, here, the planning board is thinking about making a change to the zoning ordinance. And as Bill said, it's quite a bit of work putting a zoning ordinance together and getting the town to approve it. And basically the town has said, okay, I'm happy with this. We voted on this. This is what we want. So anytime, and as you were talking about, the planning board can make a change or present a change to the town anytime, an amendment. So can an individual, as long as they get the required number of signatures and so forth. But the purpose for the change with regard to the planning board, in my mind, is it in the best interest of the town? In other words, the reason that you would make an amendment would be for something that's in the best interest of the town. Now, I know this would be in the best interest of Craig, and he's a nice guy and he's doing a good job with the golf course and the restaurant and everything. And I understand it would help him, but if you stand back and look at it impersonally, it's a special interest. And the town is thinking about, or the planning board is thinking about making a change here that's in the best interest of a special interest, not necessarily the town. Unless somebody can tell me the special interest to the town, what that reason is that the planning board is considering doing this. Because it is a big thing. I mean, you know, you're going to be subjecting the town to another public hearing and trying to learn what it means and going to another vote and all that. And I think that if you make a vote sometime today, even though this is a conceptual type situation, that tacitly you're going to be giving approval to whatever it is that you decide is you're going to support today. So I'd be somewhat careful about doing that. And I would think again about what it is that the planning board is amending, or what it is that the planning board has a reason for changing the zoning that is in the best interest of the town.
No, I hear you on that.
Can I respond just briefly?
Let's go to Rob first and then we'll get.
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment on that, and I agree, but you know, let's look at the relationship with the Waterville company over history. Not that I know a ton of that history, but you know, we've made many exceptions. Why? Because it provides greater services and opportunities to bring in more guests, to develop our economy, so on and so forth. When I look at this, you know, individually, is the town being served better by yet having another option for rehearsal dinners, for small weddings, so on and so forth, additional lodging space. So, while it's, yes, we have to watch our P's and Q's from a liability standpoint, when I look at this, I look at it through a different lens, that this is yet another advancement in services and offerings to people who visit and therefore people who live here.
But is it necessary in LDR? There are other areas that could do that.
That is arguable.
Well,
Just real fast.
okay, real quick.
I want to do a less intense that I'm allowed to do in LDR. I can subdivide this property in LDR today. And I can put in 1,500 square foot houses. And I'd just go right to the bank with all the money. So that, I don't want to do that. So if you ask about town values versus personal values, I actually want to do less than what is allowed. I want to do a much smaller development than what is allowed in there today.
Okay.
So my thinking is I can't do less, I can only do more. So the benefit to the town is actually less intense use of that property than what is allowed. So I'm asking to build it's like buying a smaller car than a big car. If you said I only can buy limousines, which is what you're saying to me, I want to buy a smaller car. And why can't I? That's the benefit to the town. The less intensive this property will be hugely less than if I put in 4 mega houses.
Well, I think the intensity is probably what's that debate in terms of traffic coming and going.
Right, the traffic
So
on this, what I'm proposing is way less than 4 individual families that could rent it or sell it amongst themselves or whatever. I could literally put in 4 houses in there on a subdivision.
Okay.
By right.
Yep.
And and I understand what, that's why I really brought up the direct thing, because there is some people that live there that wanted to buy into a neighborhood that was quiet. And I get that, I really do. But I think that my use is less intense than what is actually allowed. So the benefit to the town or to the neighbors is much less what I'm proposing than what is actually allowed.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the benefit, I think.
Okay, Lisa?
Well, I'm concerned about the golf course. It's very important to have it in town. It's a big attraction, and I think I would go for what Craig is proposing, to add those 4 cottages to make it feasible for him to make a profit too, or keep it going. If it goes under, if it's sold to somebody else, it might get worse.
Okay. Bill Larson, you have any comments? Oh, you're muted. No, still muted. No, still muted. Hold on.
Can you hear you?
Yeah, he's trying to talk, but
Okay.
there we
I'm in
go.
favor of doing this, and my reasons are essentially what Craig just stated. That it is a way, to me, in my mind, that we would keep the golf course viable, and that's it. And I think the town needs a golf course.
Okay.
There's another consideration. And you know this better than anyone else, as always. The availability of short-term rental in the town. And we're talking about, for example, Black Bear and Golden Eagle, and especially those 2. The amount of short-term rental in those 2 units has gone down significantly. Therefore, the amount of short-term rental available in the town has gone down. And if we consider ourselves a resort town, we want to have the availability of short-term rental. And I think that's also something we have to throw into the mix. Even though it's only 4 units, it is something to throw into the mix.
So I think, the PUD option sounds viable for this particular instance. So we need to think about what else, the unintended consequences, what else could happen with that, So anyone with a 1 acre lot in LDR could create a PUD with, because it's our PUD regulations right now. And only so many changes we should make at a time, I think. I don't know. Would everyone feel comfortable with this path? If we look at the PUD in LDR,
Yeah.
where there could be a 900 square foot additional building built, as long as it's a 1 acre lot
Or greater.
or greater.
That was the direction
But
I was thinking.
this suggestion doesn't change any of the regulations that pertain to LDR now.
I think it does.
And what are the changes?
Well-
When I read it, and correct me, because, sometimes when I read these things late at night, my brain is fried. But I don't think right now you could build the 900. I think that we have this kind of, is it 900 or is it 1500?
It's 50, yes, a 900
So I think
footprint.
it's a 900 footprint with a 1500 square foot unit. And I think what I was leaning toward as I read all this was eliminating the 1500.
Mhm.
That's where my brain was headed.
Okay, then inevitably, if we make a proposal that we are endorsing and recommending a change to LDR,
Yeah,
that
To the PUD.
well, but it could be applied to anywhere in the LDR.
my problem is that the board will bear the burden of writing the amendment to the zoning. That we will have to present it to the voters at town meeting. And by doing so, we automatically or by default recommend it. We recommend that they vote for it and approve it. And I'm not convinced that the board wants to be in that position.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. Do we like that pathway?
Well, once again, it brings up the question of whether or not this is good for the town. That's our responsibility.
Yeah.
We, as much as we like Craig, we're not here to do something that's solely beneficial to him. That brings up the whole question of the impartiality of the board.
Yeah.
I'm asking to do something less intense than what is approvable today.
I understand.
So you're wrong. If I wanted
Well-
to make money, I would subdivide this property today.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Rob, and then
I
Mark.
get it.
No, you don't get it.
Yeah, I
Well,
do get
let's
it.
not get into the back and
Well,
forth,
you're not
because that's
listening
not
to
gonna
me.
be constructive at all. Okay. Rob and then Mark?
Yeah, so I mean, but just like we did, it's like, okay, I thought we already kind of decided, just without a formal vote that, yes, this is something we want to go forward with. I mean, and I think to Bill's point, it's a good point. I mean, but how about just a straw poll right now? Who thinks this is a good thing for the town or not?
Okay. Mark?
I think you should analyze the entire LDR. You should look at how many lots would this affect? Because some of the LDR lots would not be eligible, but it is a more intense use, I feel, because if you do a PUD, you can limit setbacks between buildings, right? And those internal things that is going to allow, you may have, I don't know, because I haven't looked at the lots, but you may have lots out on River Road or whatever, where they could now put a 900 square foot building on their lot the way that their house exists, meet the required setbacks, do a PUD, which would increase the density of use in other LDR neighborhoods.
Yep.
And so you've got to do some analysis, I think, before you could make a reasonable decision, and you've got to answer the question that Terry asked, because we're going around it, that does this, if this is good for this particular instance, right there on Snows Mountain Road, that's one thing, but how does it affect Cascade Ridge or the North End or River Road.
No,
you-
yeah.
You've got to look at
And
the
that's
map.
exactly, well, I think it's beyond that because anyone could purchase two lots and merge them together. I mean, I think it's even beyond what exists now. This could be something where conceivably, every lot in LDR could
Potentially.
do this. And is that that's what I was asking, is that a direction that we want to go in? I'm not necessarily saying it's good or bad. Do we need the higher density in town? You know, what's best for the town? Yeah.
And part of that discussion is stacking uses, because we can look at Moose Run, where we had multifamily dwellings on top of single-family home dwellings. And when you start adding uses, like adding this commercial use to the LDR, potentially, even if it's under limited circumstances, if the market drives it that way, then that type of development's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Moose Run.
Yeah.
We had VC land where single-family homes were allowed. The markets favored the single-family homes, and that's what got built,
Exactly.
right? So adding uses in a zone is something that I think you need to think long and hard about,
Oh.
like Terry said.
Absolutely. Rich?
Yeah, I was just going to say, again, I've lost the bubble a little bit. I'm not sure we're going down necessarily the path that Craig wants to go. I'm not sure what the it is, what it is we're actually discussing here. If we're discussing a PUD, there's nothing in front of us, in front of the board, for us to latch onto. So first, I'd like to hear from Craig. Is this a path that you think you want to go down? Because I thought your original path was convert LDR to rec and then allow limited lodging on rec, but we've gone a long way from that.
Well, there's options, and I think that's where we're at right now, is that I have looked at the PUD, I've looked at what the present zoning calls for, I've looked at other areas. The reason I would propose the rec change a little bit, I thought, was to not get involved in all the zoning changes in the LDR. And if we just moved it into rec, it's a very small area on that map as far as what is controlled and what's not controlled. Yes, the tennis courts are controlled under the rec zoning. I have rec zoning. There is a vacant lot that has rec zoning on it too. So there's only 3 properties that could actually be done anything on. I think if we put it into, the reason for the putting it into the rec zone and then with a mega amount of conditions, so that we don't have housing on the golf course, let's say, would be the less problematic politically. That's why I propose that. I favor actually the PUD route because it's very defined and it stays within the board, let's say. I prefer the PUD and just tweak the PUD thing. I don't see why you couldn't. I think Mark is correct. I have looked at basically the lots that are available, what this would affect in the LDR, and there you would have to literally buy another house to do it. I don't see anybody buying which they can do today and rent it out transiently, basically. So why would they tear it down to build a little cottage on it? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of that going on, or will go on economically. I don't see anybody buying $1 million house and then buying $1 million house next to it and tearing it down to do what I want to do. Is the benefit to the town of what I'm proposing is a less intense use, very controlled use versus a subdivision, which is allowed under the present zone. That's my take on it, is that I'm doing a less intense use than what is allowed. All right, as far as if you include it in the rec zone, I think you need to put on a ton of conditions so that the next guy does not build housing or transient housing on the golf course. I agree with that. Personally, as a developer in the previous life, the golf course is way better than housing. Housing is not, as you can see, there's not a lot of money in building houses. There's more money in running the golf course and making the golf course correct. I envision these 4 cottages to be an accessory use to the business, basically, to make it more viable in a down market or an up market or whatever, and it would just add a different dimension to the whole property that would make it better. It's lacking. We have less units. We're not seeing any, the guest counts are way down. But that's a whole different ballgame. I don't think it's our job to provide housing for everybody, but I think if we tweak the PUD bylaws, I think it would be a better route, a better controllable route. I don't want to build 900 square foot units. If you did, you would have 2 bedrooms, I think, on them. Because that's basically we used to build 800 square foot capes and they all had 2 bedrooms on the first floor. So I know what 900 looks like. You can get the 1500 just by putting roof structures on. So that's not hard to do, but that doesn't necessarily make it look good either. I would prefer to maybe do the PUD and to tweak it a little bit. I think you're going to see that there aren't that many lots that this would totally affect.
Okay, thank you. So do we need to back up a bit and as a board address, what Terry's my brain just stopped. What Terry explained.
Wendy, can I just add one thing on what I just heard Craig say?
Sure.
Part of the conversation driven by Craig, and I'm the outside objective advocate here. It seems to be aimed at only allowing writing a zoning amendment in a way that only allows him to do this. My advice would be to think more in terms of something that's applicable throughout the LDR.
Right.
In order, it certainly could appear to be spot zoning and someone who doesn't want any competition for their own guest cottages. Otherwise, not a lawyer, but that's my view as your planner.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, and so with that in mind too, I think we can see the potential. I'm still have grave reservations about looking at the rec route. But do we even want to?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can we do a unofficial straw poll?
Okay.
All right. To say, okay, so we kind of zero in on that which we really want to discuss, that there are 2 options on the table. One option would be to do something in rec. Yet, are we in favor of doing something in rec at all? Yes or no? And then are we in favor of doing something in LDR? Yes or no? And then we could zero in on that. So now we really are zeroing in on what we wanted.
Except I think the greater question is, we have 3 questions.
I'm sorry.
Do we want to do this at all?
Okay.
And if so, rec or LDR?
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
amended. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, rather
yeah,
than
just
just
to get the opinion.
let's see where we are and zero in on that which we wish to do.
Okay.
Or not do.
Right. So do you want to go around the table? We'll have just a person by person discussion. It's not a vote, but just a person by person
Right.
opinion. And we can include members of the public in this opinion, I think.
Right.
Yes.
Where do you
Okay.
want to start?
We'll start with Terry.
I hate to be the bad guy, but I just think that if I have to explain to somebody, and I'm not going to be able to vote anyway, but if I was to vote and I had to explain to somebody in the town why I voted to do this, it would be awkward for me to say, because it really helps Craig out in keeping the golf course going. Because then I would have to answer the question, well, what if Craig dies tomorrow? And somebody else comes in and it doesn't tie it to the golf course anymore. I mean, it seems like a good idea. And I like the golf course. I didn't even play golf, but I like it because it looks nice. And I like the restaurant. I go there all the time. And I would hate to see something happen that would stop it from doing its operation now, because I think it's good for the town as well. But it still comes down to, if you take the personalities out of it, it comes down to helping. You're changing you're intending to change the zoning ordinance for the purpose of aiding a private enterprise, which perhaps in some people's eyes might be in the benefit of the town, but it's not clearly in the town's benefit. Otherwise, if it was in the town's benefit, I mean, best interest, then why didn't the planning board do this before? Why did we wait for Craig to come and ask for it to be done? If it was in the best interest of the town, we should have been considering it before and should have talked about it. So I would say, I don't think it's a good idea to do this, but that's up to the board.
Okay. Okay, Mike?
All right, I wrote down the 3 questions. Should we do anything? Yes. Do we want to do it in zoning? No. Do we want to concentrate?
In zoning?
In other words, do we want to do something in the rec, zoning for rec?
okay.
The answer is no. Do we want to look at that which can be done in LDR? I think the answer is yes. That's my feeling.
Okay.
And I understand what you're saying, the other side of that.
To me.
Don't touch you. I mean, the other side of that, and I understand what you're saying, is I think the character of the town and the availability of short-term rental has changed dramatically in the last 18 months. And I think that adding short-term rental capacity, even though it's only 4 units, and a different type of 4 units from that which is available in other areas, I think is good for the town, in my view. I know what you're saying, but I think it can be explained in my tiny brain that way.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Lisa?
I would go the same way as Mike, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in favor of it. But I have too many questions to kind of zero in on what options I'd like to go. So can we look 900 square feet for the building? Can we lower that? Can we request that be lowered to 400 square feet?
If the town allows it, that would basically open up all of LDR to tiny homes.
But John, well, the question is, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
The question that we have to ask is, let's zero in on, A, do we want to do anything? Do we want to do it in rec, or do we want to focus in on LDR and see how we would like to change the zoning of LDR? And there are the options that are there. There are lots of options that are there. All right, but I just want to zero in on where we want to
Is
go.
it worth going forward?
Yeah, I get that. I'm in favor of going forward, but I have a lot of questions to go forward.
Right, but do you think it's worth going forward in LDR or rec?
LDR.
Yes.
Oh boy. All right, I think Terry has opened my eyes. We have a limited amount of land in our town, and the board has been struggling with, what's the best use of it. And I have to say that every time Craig says this is a less intense use of the land, I started to think, you're saying exactly what we don't want to hear, which is that, the boards has been talking a long time about how do we more intensively use the land that we have in the town, not less intensively use it. So I've been feeling more and more uncomfortable about this as the meeting has gone on. I came in thinking, yeah, I really want to support the business, and I really want to, I feel like it's a balance between housing is tight right now. I checked with one of the realtors in town, and there's very little for sale right now. It's a position that I really had no idea we'd be in quite at this point in time when we were thinking about this, a few years back, making our decisions. But at this point, we've got limited land and we need more quality full-time housing, but we also need more quality short-term rentals. And we've been talking a lot about the housing part, and that's really been the planning board's emphasis. And that's been how we've been making our rules. And so that's why we really haven't been thinking about how do we also make sure that that there's a lot of quality short-term rentals that we've got too, to keep the character of the resort town. Because otherwise we're just a town that happens to have a ski resort as opposed to being a resort town. So I am open-minded to the fact that we didn't think of everything before. And that, I can be convinced that, we can learn new things. But I am not sure that, like, it is a different way of thinking than we have been. And it does worry me that we're so quick to to think differently when this is coming up.
I don't want to quit.
Especially when, we really do have a shortage of quality full-time housing in town right now. And that's been our goal this whole time. And now we're permanently taking off the table. How many lots? 4? 3?
Potential, right now it's one lot. It's 2.8 acre lot.
Yeah, but each lot could be a half acre.
Each could be,
because it's in.
depending on the landscaping.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's, and so I think Mark is right. We need to make sure that we're not doing something that's going to have potentially really negative long-term consequences. So I guess we just need to really think about this carefully. Because I do want to balance having really good short-term rentals. I really want this to be a resort community. So I want to believe that we haven't thought of everything and that we can do something to accommodate good ideas. But I don't want to rush into it. So I don't know what to do right now.
One thing we have to remember, it is my understanding, Hope, that the 22 units, 13 units over on Golden Heights, 9 units over on Green Peak, that those units are going to be full-time people.
Right, but before I see where
I don't know where they're going.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
obviously.
see where you're going with it. I don't want to interrupt you, but we're just trying to get
Yeah.
everyone's opinions.
Okay.
Not
I don't know what it is.
Well, yeah, that's just what I was going to clarify too. So where you would fall on our little opinion thing.
Yeah,
So it
well,
sounds like you're-
I am undecided.
Okay.
I'm not sure where I fall at this point.
Okay.
I came in like gung ho for it, to be honest, and now I'm not sure.
Okay. That's fair. Nope.
It's a cumbersome position, but not to reiterate everything that Terry said, I happen to agree with that position that it's an unusual circumstance for the planning board to be faced with a proposal that's not concrete. Usually the planning board receives a presentation and then we vote on it. That's not where we are today. Nevertheless, whatever we do, if we say yes, we're recommending a zoning change. We're recommending to voters. And by doing the recommendation, we're using the influence of the planning board to say to voters that we recommend this, we think you should do it. And I don't want to go there.
Okay.
I'm also concerned a great deal about unintended consequences. I don't think we know, maybe we never will, but we don't know where the outcome of this will be. That is, once again, there's no proposal. I'd much rather be trying to decide whether the proposal is good or bad for the plan or for the town. And that, once again, I'm concerned about our impartiality. So, if I had to vote yes or no today, I'd vote no.
Okay. Rob?
Okay, so I'm a little more worried about what's good for the town rather than the impartiality, let's say, of the planning board. I mean, we exist here to be available to the community, to make decisions and to move things forward. And to Mark's point, which I think is an excellent one, is that more analysis. Yes, I can't agree more, because we are kind of diddling around. I'm going through here. What is exactly LDR today and all this? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to take a year pause to do that. So, more analysis, yes, that makes for a better decision. More time, a lot of times doesn't even make for a better decision because other factors come into play. So, we've got a snapshot right here. I did want to ask, so we agree that PUD is not an option?
Oh, no, PUD is an option.
Okay. And with the rec, I think Wendy, totally agree with you. Although if, there were a change and it was special exception, and in this case, that special exception would be these conditions, that seems to follow a flow that, would make sense in any of the zones. And then just to, I want to, not that I'm trying to hit everybody, but, definitely agree about this. We have to be flexible to times. There may be a time 50 years from now where the right thing to happen with the land that is today the golf course, because the world has changed. Let's say golf dies, kind of like, other sports have died or been minimized. Maybe there is better use for that land. So I think we do have to be flexible to the times and, circumstances a little bit. I mean, this is not the Bible. That's not changing. This is something that will be revised and move forward. And I do kind of agree with this less intense thing, to disagree with you, Nancy, is that, we talk about not wanting to overdevelop. Well, Terrell Group right now is looking at doing a lot of development where there won't be much space. Like, I forget the name of it, the little trail that you can cut across. It's just all those little things. Yeah, so I think every opportunity we have for lower intensity, if we look long-term, it's good. And on that, I think I'd rather have, because right now, at least the trend, with real estate is that if those 4 homes are built on that land, those are going to be full-time people. Now that's great. We're not going to get, as a town, any more tax revenue. I don't believe on how that works. But, we're talking about 10 weeks. People will be here only on weekends. And, it's not going to be more traffic, more this, that, the other thing, more cost for schooling, because they most likely would be full-time people, an assumption. So my vote is go forward. And those are my comments.
And with LDR or rec?
Actually, I go with rec.
Okay. Okay, Bill Larson? Oh.
Let me unmute this. Okay, I'm in favor of going forward, as I stated before. I think it's good for the town. I think it's good for the golf course, and I think we want to keep a golf course. Twice before, the planning board has created special zoning districts where the interest was in creating conditions that were exceptions. And I don't understand why we can't create this as a special zoning district, and restrict what Craig is asking for. That's my opinion.
Okay, so
the 2 special zoning districts, in case you don't know where, you don't remember, we allowed a builder of a hotel on Corcoran's Pond to build a deck out over the pond. And there, that's on town land. The other one was the academy. We allowed the academy to do some things that were not in the nature of the land that they were buying. So I think there's a precedent for this. And I think the easiest way to do it is create a special zoning district where that we would allow Craig, in return for he would restrict himself to these 4 homes only. He couldn't use the land if we created a special zoning district to build single-family homes. Now, maybe he's not interested in that, but that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Members of the public, I guess we know where Craig falls.
Well, no, yes and no. I mean,
Okay.
I think I will obviously present something formally if I had direction. That's what I'm asking for. Should I go PUD, LDR, recreational, or just a subdivision? So those are those 3 questions. That's what the straw poll should be. How you want to proceed with it. I can't go all 3, or I could, I guess, but make more sense. He's saying is a 4th item, which is what the academy did on recreational zoning. And that what you allowed for the academy was a special interest for that particular owner, period. It doesn't affect anybody else. So there is precedent to stuff like that. I would like to do a study, or at least quickly, or pay for a study to find out how many lots in the LDR actually could be affected. I think it's I looked at it real quick, and I think it's down to nothing. I think if you limit the size is the half-acre part of it, it's fine. Again, I'm just looking for direction, and I would then propose something more concrete, obviously.
Okay.
But would love to have direction. If not, I'll just, go with the route that's available to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rich?
Thank you, Wendy. So although I don't have a vote, I would like to just make a couple of comments on the comments that were made earlier. Terry's point cannot be overemphasized. There should be no reason other than the public good that the planning board should be discussing any changes to the zoning. And that does not mean that it will not benefit a private interest. And in fact, I do believe, as the way our country has always been set up, is that the advancement of private interest lead to the public good. That's sort of central to the economic theory of our country. But then the private interest, if you're going to make the argument that the private interest is the advancement of the private interest is good for the town or to the benefit of the residents of Waterville Valley, then show me. We make statements here that, well, it's necessary for the golf course, or it's good for the golf course, or it's going to bring in more people. Those are not backed up by any data or analysis that I think have been presented. And I say this not in terms of personality, but just in terms of as public servants, what you should be thinking of if you're thinking of the public good. Yes, private interest, supporting private interest can be a public good. I think we can all agree with that. Is it here is the question you have to decide in your minds. I'm sorry, but STR, we opened up 4 more units. We opened up the whole town to SDR. Right? You can have STR and LDR. You can have STR and HDR. You can have short-term rentals and VC. The whole town is essentially open to short-term rentals now. I don't see 4 units as necessarily being a powerful argument to make zoning changes of this potential magnitude. But again, that's a part of the analysis that should be, I think, conducted. I also find it very interesting that the planning board is considering touching what could be considered a third rail, and that is LDR. You are discussing changing the zonings to what is allowed in LDR. And that is probably the toughest thing to do in this town. It's why we didn't go forward with proposing bed and breakfasts in LDR, but allowed it in certain circumstances in other zones. So please think carefully before moving ahead with any changes to LDR. You might find yourself in a difficult position in trying to explain a very complicated argument to the townspeople who rightly or wrongly may hear just you're allowing commercial activity, tiny houses and LDR. And you can try explaining that to your blue in the face. That's not the case, but it may not come out that way, and you've potentially damaged the reputation of the board. And we saw that a couple years ago when we tried to we tried to allow for affordable housing by changing zoning in BC, I believe it was. With regard to intensity, I don't know. Again, this would come under analysis, I think, and I note that Craig said that he would help with the analysis, which I think would be a very good thing. But it seems to me it would be less intense in terms of land area if the board were to look at making a changes to REC than to LDR, as well as the intensity you might get from changing LDR. Just in terms of land area and people's interests. Special district, perhaps the fact that we have created special districts in the past is an argument for not creating them in the future. Right? It may be a precedent, but it may not have been the precedent that we wanted to, that we in retrospect think was a good precedent. It is a slippery slope because anybody can come in and say, well, you created a special district for this private enterprise or this private landowner. Why can't you consider it for me? And I have a good to the town too, because I want to do X, Y, Z. So again, that may come under unintended consequences. And I think that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. So you're against moving forward.
I don't have a vote on the matter.
But that was just an opinion. We're not, this isn't a vote. This is just
Yeah, I would say that I would be, were I on the board, I'd be challenged like Nancy with coming up with a way to go. Only because I have nothing concrete in front of me to try to understand what it is I would ultimately be voting on. And then you have this very high bar in the back of my mind that Terry brought up, that we should only be considering this because it serves a public good, and then all the subsequent questions. I think that I can trust Craig to do what he says he's going to do. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I do think there's merit in as I think through it, there may be merit in what he wants to do, but I don't have all the facts in front of me to be able to make a decision. So I would frankly, I would say undecided until I had more information in front of me as to what we're going forward with. Right. Is it REC? Is it PUD? I don't know which, or special district that Bill has tabled. I don't know the answer because I don't have all the facts in front of me at this point in time.
Okay. And my little opinion, I have great hesitation with changing any of our zoning for what is, I think, potentially a good idea. I think the cottage aspect could be an asset for what's available for short-term rentals. It's not available now. It's a nice option, an idea, but I'm very hesitant to look at changing the zoning because I just don't think we can really foresee all of the consequences. So I guess I'd be more in favor of looking at a PUD and not moving forward with a zoning change. Sort of where I'm falling with that. So
what I hear, I'll look at the PUD and try to see what we can tweak in the PUD and go that route, because that's what I hear here. So
yeah,
fine with me.
Yeah,
a PUD in LDR.
Yes.
Well, the PUD is allowed under.
Right, in LDR, not in REC.
right?
Well, the property is
We'll look
LDR.
at, I'll look at
Right.
how the PUD is set up and see what I can tweak in that part of it. And then we'll also do a rundown on lot sizes and available land in the LDR.
For LDR. Yeah, I still, yeah. You know, the introduction of more
I mean, I
vigorous
can-
commercial lodging to a zone, I think is different
I
than
can't come in
Airbnb.
immediately. I did present you with a conceptual plan, what a subdivision would look like. You have that, I gave that to you.
Mhm.
If that's something that you think, maybe just go with a subdivision plan and create a subdivision in there. I just need to know, I guess, but I prefer to do that PUD, and maybe I'll look at that. But,
That would give the board something more concrete to look at.
right,
Um,
and probably, even though I appreciate Bill saying it, but I think the special exception zoning is definitely, I hate to use the word spot zoning, because spot zoning, the word spot does not appear in any zoning language. It's just something that we use, but it would be kind of along those lines. So probably that's not a good idea. And what I hear is that probably recreational is not a good idea if you want to move this lot into recreational. So I can tweak, or at least look at the PUD and see what I can do about tweaking that a little bit. That's what I hear. And if that's not what I hear, then I'm mistaken, I guess.
Okay.
And the other thing would be to come in wholeheartedly with a subdivision plan.
How does the board feel about the PUD idea with existing zoning in place? That would be a way to encourage him forward.
I have a question on PUD.
Yeah.
If he puts cottages in with, under the PUD, and then years from now he sells it, another contractor comes in, can they take that building down and put a PUD, more buildings in, like a, what, townhouses or
That would have to,
condos?
that would have to come to the board.
First, right?
Have to go
Yeah.
back
But
to
it
what?
would still be zoned for that particular.
Well, all of LDR is currently potentially developable under PUD.
Okay.
So,
That clarifies some thoughts, okay.
Can I add just one thing?
yes,
You'd still need to look at the definition of lodging versus short-term rental, because
true.
the PUD would allow 5 year-round homes, kind of, right? But your definition of lodging right now seems like if they were all there for short-term rentals, that's more of a lodging facility. So if Craig's gonna propose a amendment, he'd want to look at the definition of lodging too.
Thank you. Is that-
That's what I was.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So. All right,
So
And this is the
PUD
def-
is more of a direction we're looking to go in,
well, encouraging Craig to go in.
or, okay,
Um,
but what we're recommending. to Craig.
right,
Okay.
right. But then, yes, as a board, we would need to look at lodging versus short-term rentals in our definitions and how that would potentially work or not.
I
in
mean, there
this
may
zone.
still need to be a zoning.
Zoning change.
Exactly.
And I think that's what Tara was talking about. So
Right,
I think that should be part in your next discussion, you know, whether it's Tara or Craig or whoever should identify what might have to be changed through an amendment.
but if Craig were to bring in a proposal, and from that, we could see how that would weigh on the different definitions, and we would know at that point.
Yeah.
The best way to move forward.
And you've had a very extensive conversation, so you've already got a lot of the information out there.
Yep.
So now you're kind of honing in on specific changes that would be required through the PUD process, so.
Right,
You know, the October 14th meeting is kind of timeline wise, still falling within what you normally do. For a minute,
Right,
barely, but.
it's there. Okay. Okay. Did you have any additional questions, Craig?
No, I don't have questions. I just, yes, you would have to check if you wanted to tweak, better word, the PUD language to maybe less intense zoning, allow less intense zoning.
I don't think we need to tweak the PUD zoning.
There's the PUD requirements. I want to, we're gonna, right now, I want to be less intense than what is allowed.
Right, right.
So I need those to be available to me. Right now, they're not.
What do
So
you mean? They're
the
not?
900, 1,500 square feet.
Oh, the building size.
Yeah.
Right.
Is to lower those down. And yes, in short-term rentals are open to everybody. If you wanted to tweak, I don't know why, I'd have to look at it again, but, and maybe talk to Tara separately, but if it's allowed, short-term rentals are allowed and it's a PUD, I don't think we have to change the word zoning, lodging, because it's not a lodge. It's single-family houses. You're allowing single-family houses, basically.
Well, you've got to look at the definitions, and I think that's where your changes, the amendments could
Right.
potentially be.
So
it may be simple.
I think we could
Still
open
needs to
up
look.
the PUD language to allow some other creative type development.
Well, I don't think we need to change the PUD language because it's there to allow for creative development. I mean, that's.
Well, then that would be the route to go.
Right.
But if you needed to make any changes at all in it, it would have to go to town meeting.
Right, I don't think we're looking at changes in PUD, but we have potential definition changes and the building size change for LDR
Right.
to look at.
Which we'd have to go through town meeting.
Yes.
Which would have to go through. town.
Right, that's where I think we're suggesting is that what you're suggesting is that we have a PUD, but that we would have to amend the zoning to allow the units built in the PUD to be less than the 1,500
Yes.
square feet that is there.
And there
Right,
is
I'm just
also.
saying less than.
There is also the potential, and Craig just, we've seen it happen historically where someone brought a conceptual PUD forward and that guaranteed that the zoning amendments that were kind of allowing for that failed. So it depends on how you want to proceed as well.
You mean
When.
failed at the town meeting or?
Yes,
the planning
failed.
board?
Right, failed
Two
town
years.
meeting.
Right.
Right. So there is a possibility that we could go through this and people would vote against the building size change.
I'm
And
perfectly willing to accept whatever the town votes on.
right, just to make sure
obviously.
you're clear on,
Well, I know.
investment of
yes,
time.
yes, yeah. I mean, I don't want to do it on a Sunday night, so.
Yeah.
I'm, will accept whatever the town votes on. And I think that's easy, and it would be pretty much up to, yes, the planning board, if they endorse a certain amendment at the town meeting, yes, it does carry a little bit of weight, but it's obviously guaranteed that it doesn't necessarily guarantee a vote. So I don't think you're gonna lose any more, gain any more I think it's better for me to come to you to ask ideas than me to just write it up on my own and try to stand out in front of town meeting.
Right.
I think this is a better route personally.
Cool, okay.
Great.
Any other comments? Bill, any other comments out there in Zoom land?
No,
All right, well, so thank you, Craig, for that. I think we had one other topic, right?
You had something in your notes about the chapel.
Chapel, you had
committee.
mentioned
So
that.
the chapel committee is continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
On a purchase and sale agreement. We've been working back and forth with town council on that. There will be a point in time where the chapel committee has to come in to the planning board for both site plan or subdivision approval and site plan review. So I don't have anything specific We do not have the draft purchase and sale agreement yet. That'll work its way through the Board of Selectmen, right, in accordance with the town meeting vote in May. But the planning board, there will be some activity here at the planning board. I would anticipate if they get the purchase and sale agreement completed and signed by the selectmen, they will be in to do both the subdivision and the site plan review with the planning board this winter. So it would predate town meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so just wanted to make you aware of that and know that the committee's hopefully getting close to having a draft of the conditional purchase and sale agreement. Okay.
Yeah, Mark, and I'll just jump in because I'm on that committee. Yeah, I mean, we're shooting for, we're making progress on the PNS since the discussion with you. And we're looking at around November 1st. And Bertie Britton, who's kind of chair of our board, she'll be reaching out, and sometime in early December, we think that will, is the timeline to come in and brief here. And we definitely, because we're going to be on the clock, the town meeting again, and we want to have all our ducks in a row by the end of January.
And the timeline, so if the conditional purchase and sale agreement is completed and signed off by everybody prior to town meeting, that it doesn't mean that the chapel will be built. You guys can still be going through the subdivision requirements and the site plan review requirements, right, the applications. But that meets what town meeting said to the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen have to have a purchase and sale agreement, even though there are 20 conditions on it, right, that still need to be met. They have to have that agreement signed before town meeting. If they don't, then we have to start the process all over again.
Right.
So because that authority to sign the purchase and sale agreement was good for 1 year.
That's clear. All right. If there's nothing else for this meeting, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mark, before you go, can I talk with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to listen to that.
A motion to adjourn?
I
Yes,
will
no?
provide the motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that.
Second, all right, all those in favor, Mike,
Michael Tell, I.
Wendy Rathgeber, yes.
John Messine, aye.
Nancy Knight, yes.
Bill Spence, yes.
Bill Larson,
Yes.
all righty, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Wendy.
John, are you talking about Palm Loop? I think it's be part of that little discussion.
I guess so.
Well, to me,